if it isn't Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and you know what that means. It means we get to hang out together. I, as your host and disembodied voice named Troy, say unto everybody in the chat, hello. Man, we got a full house again, and I know why you're here, because you want to say hi to Crystal Frazier and Steve Kinson. Crystal, how are you today?
I'm good. Kind of grooving on the new Bobby music.
You like that? Mm-hmm. You know, what's funny is it's not so new, but you are only able to hear it now as we've...
It's new to us.
As our skills have grown, sort of. Now that I said that, we will implode, and there will be, who knows? It would be spectacular. But now you get to hear it, which is kind of nice. Sort of a little mellow intro into our
I really like how you've been able to pipe things more into our little isolation booth.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I'm having human contact. It's terrible.
Right? Yeah. No, it's weird. It's a little odd. Steve, how are you today?
Pretty good as Mondays go. Reasonably productive one, albeit a bunch of, sort of annoying things to take care of off the to-do list, but still, they're getting done.
Yeah, well, that's good, and that's, a good way to start a Monday, but the best way to start a Monday is with Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and we've got a ton of stuff going on, and I will admit to getting things ready to go, and then remember we talked about this being Death and Taxes, and I thought, what? That's what a bummer of a show.
It's tax week.
It's tax week, and Death and Taxes.
Or it was when we planned all this out. Now tax week's gotten moved forward a month, and now we just...
It's a lot. And hey, Nicholas Morrow says, hi, Crystal, Troy, and Steve. Jordan Taylor says, hey, all. Nice intro. Strangely, that's the first time I've seen it. Nicholas, I'm glad you enjoy it. Owen Casey Stevens says he liked the opening a lot.
Yes.
You know who made that?
Provided by the multi-talented Alex Thomas.
That is very true. Alex Thomas is with us as well and says, happy Monday, everyone, and to you as well.
I hate those people who are good at everything.
And I know. I mean,
you're
come
one
on,
of those people.
Alex doesn't even have to try.
I have no idea how to do video editing.
It's a little maddening because he doesn't try super hard, but ends up doing it anyway. So, let's see. But yeah, so Alex Thomas is here with us in chat. And hello, Alex. I want to say hello to everybody on the YouTubes and the Facebooks. And, as we're moving through the program, ask a question, say a thing. Here we go. So Owen Casey Stevens, the nicest guy in the biz, says, we should get Crystal to stat this for random things on the shelves behind her using the M&M Basic Heroes Handbook.
Most of these are things that already exist in other intellectual properties. So
yeah. So there you go, Owen. Trying to put us in a jackpot. But yeah, so
get us sued.
Yeah, right. No, let's see.
Hasbro will come for us if I try to stat up a pony.
Alex Thomas, I just push buttons and sometimes good things happen. I can't take credit. Well, I appreciate that. And also, when I push buttons, the things don't happen. They unhappen things. So whatever. Whatever that skill is, what would that skill be? Would that be luck?
Or the opposite of luck?
The opposite of luck?
Yeah, unluck.
Jinx?
Yep.
Jinx, yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's talk about the fact that people are demanding that you stat up some super ponies. But that, in addition to, what's the show about today? What have we crafted for everybody?
Well, today, because it's tax week, or because it was tax week until very recently, we have statted up Death and Taxes, who are two characters from the old first edition Mutants and Masterminds annual #1 from way back in 2005.
Nice.
And this is a free little 3-page supplement just for our viewers here on M&M Monday, and going out to our patrons on Patreon as well.
That is and just as an extra added bonus of just a happy Monday to you.
Yep, little tax return.
A little return, yeah. I love it.
The whole process, and for folks who want the behind-the-scenes details, the whole process started with us going, there were characters called Death and Taxes, right? They were in something somewhere. and Crystal and I hunting through all of our M&M books, trying to track them down.
There's 20 years worth of M&M books at this point.
That is
Yep.
something. Is it really 20? It's 20 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
2021 is our 20th anniversary.
Holy, we got to do something. Don't you think?
Uh-huh.
Some kind of something.
That sounds like you creating more work for us, Troy.
Or,
I mean,
you know,
does this involve me getting cake?
I think we get cake and some spandex.
I
Those
don't think
go
anyone
so
wants
well
to
together,
see me.
too.
I didn't think about
Nobody
that,
wants
but
to
no.
see me in spandex even before I've had cake.
Yeah, no spandex for me post-pandemic
Yeah,
for
and
a while.
Yeah.
Not to mention, cake in spandex is a just for fans thing, and I only do it on request.
That's
Absolutely.
thoughtful,
Yes.
very thoughtful. Yeah, and yet still wholesome in some way. Yeah, I will tell you that my carb diet, my quarantine carb diet, I just realized yesterday as I was eating chips and then a croissant and then a bagel. I'm like, I'm only eating carbs. And then I ate 50 cookies and then started the show today. So let's see. Alex Thomas says that mutants and masterminds can drink. Is that true?
Not
It's old
until
enough
next
to-
year.
Oh, next
Yeah,
year.
I was
Oh,
gonna say,
gotcha.
no-
Gotcha.
Oh, I
Next
guess it
year will
depends
be
on-
old enough to drink.
Yeah, what state are we in? Or is it Canada?
That's
Yeah, maybe it's
In most of
Canada.
the United States, probably not.
Yeah, most of the US it's 21 or older.
Oh,
Some
and-
states it's 18 or older.
Owen would like to see a birthday hero supplement, cake and spandex. Bob Petit, you and me both, friend. Bob put on his pandemic 20. I too. Michael Mendoza
Yeah.
always wondered who would win in a fight between death and taxes.
Probably taxes. I don't think death prepares for anything, whereas taxes does the homework.
Indeed.
Or wait, are we talking about the concepts or the characters?
You know-
Concepts for the characters.
Yeah,
Exactly.
well, let's dive in on the characters. What is all about them? What is
Whoop.
the doggy agrees?
So, Death and Taxes were part of a collection of really sort of low-level Mutants and Masterminds characters. The versions of them we came up with are Power Level 8 in 3rd edition M&M. And basically were involved in, well, it's hard to call it a cult when it's unclear whether it's anyone but them who really believes in it. But hold to the notion that there is some secret war going on between all people with superpowers, and that it's going to determine basically in the end who are the sort of survival of the fittest winners, amongst all of the superpowered people in the world. And sort of this sort of Highlander-esque, there can be only one ending to it all. And Taxes basically has the ability to steal other people's superpowers temporarily. And she's really mad about it because she can only steal them temporarily. And so she gets, like occasional tastes of power, but doesn't get to hold on to it.
How does she steal them? But what process does she using to steal them? What's the?
She has some kind of metahuman power to do that.
I gotcha.
But it's unclear exactly how she does it.
Yeah, we don't really get into their origins beyond they have mutant powers.
I gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha.
And then Death is just a fairly typical brick. He's super strong, super tough, super agile, and also kind of dense and paranoid.
Yep. And kind of plays on the notion for these lower power level characters of just how scary a real super strong character is, when you're dealing with mostly breakable normal humans.
Beautiful. I'm gonna pull that down because I believe if I am not I was just looking at that PDF because Crystal sent it to me. There we go. We'll pull that up and we'll kind of take a look at them. They're kind of I know people like this.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Me too. But I'm wondering, we talked a little bit before the show. Oh boy, I'm telling you, there are people with some ideas on what we can do for the 20th anniversary book.
I bet there are.
Book.
Yeah.
Who said anything about book?
Sean,
Right.
one of the Seans. I'm telling on you, Sean.
I believe the statement I made was cake related.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe cake in the shape of a book. But
Oh, hey, I like
Oh,
that.
I like it.
I do. Yum yum.
Oh wait, is this gonna involve fondant?
it always
Do you like
does.
fondant?
I'm not a
No.
giant fan, really.
No, it's gross. Also, it's like so touched by hands, like just very aggressively
Guess it's
massaged.
needed a lot.
Wow. Grody. I don't like food that has a fingerprint in it. Let's
Well,
see.
you're gonna hate my mother's thumbprint cookies.
Right?
Now, I'm
That
not
said,
sure.
a villain named Fondant could work.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, yeah. What
Just
would
has
that?
the power to make you like vaguely grossed out.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Or has the ability to just mold things. Like you can make everything soft and mold it.
Or to turn into almost the shape of a thing. Anything with
Right.
fondant just sort of looks like
Oh
it's.
no, it's a criminal mastermind who replaces whatever she steals with cake.
With cake. Oh,
That
it's
looks
it's,
exactly.
it's
That.
that character where everything is actually cake.
Oh, that
She pulls
one.
a gun and it's cake,
Cake.
and you pull your superhero gun and it's also
It's still cake.
Oh, Corey Alcorn says, wait, if you didn't celebrate the last 20 years individually, that means you have to eat 20 kinds of cake.
oh no.
Now almost
I've been
the shape.
training my whole life for this.
Right? Well, if we must.
I love it.
I think you vastly underestimated the capabilities of depressed queers.
Yeah, exactly.
Indeed.
Yeah, the cake ability, more like.
Right.
Alex Thomas says fondant is impervious, toughness for cake. Okay, got that.
It is kind of like cake armor. Yeah.
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 Bob Petit says fondant is a symbiote like venom. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it. Alex Thomas, we have a whole rogues gallery for cake-themed villains: fondant, mirror glaze, pineapple upside down, and smash cake. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
No
Yeah.
lava?
Yeah.
Sure.
Chocolate lava.
Funnel cake with his teleporting abilities.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's that kind of grody red cake?
They're all red or all led by Hostess.
I love it. I love it. And maybe like just a furious sort of put upon moody young hero, villain hero named Twinkie, who's mad because they're not quite cake.
Mm-hmm.
No, if you've got somebody dark and broody, it's got to be devil's food.
Right.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Jordan, a book cake with the covers of all 3 editions of the Mutants and Masterminds core rulebook should be fun. All right, I'm looking forward. So here's what's going to happen. The chat, because they are, if you are following along, your canon is you're all one, kind of globbed together group, and so get to bacon.
Yeah, I was gonna say for our birthday, you're supposed to give us gifts.
I know.
So
Right.
I know.
we'll wait for chat to make a book for us.
An addition to the to-do list is not a gift. Bob Petit, cake or death. Cake or death. Agreed. I love it. We why don't we open up on this? And I have a tell, and I'll let everybody know. Like, if you ever hear me sort of pausing as I'm thinking, sort of Star Trek Captain Kirk classic style, I'm not being dramatic. Yeah, right. I'm not being dramatic in so much as I'm trying to be diplomatic and finding a hard way to get it out of my mouth. But part of what this is,
What's in your mouth?
little throwback to the break before y'all. I don't think you heard that, but
Oh, I don't think so.
No.
During break, my dog came in eating I don't know what.
A
So
mystery,
we had a whole
right.
conversation about what's in your mouth.
yeah. And toddlers and dogs having that same kind of problem, and Troy, I guess, which
occasionally
I'll
Troy.
cop to.
What's
But
in your mouth, Troy?
yeah. So what's in my mouth right now is when this was put together, Death and Taxes, the PDF, which everyone's going to get here shortly. But when it was first sort of put together, was that how many years ago?
15,
Oh, gosh, it's-
16 years ago now.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Thinking about the evolution of society and ourselves and our understanding of the world at large, speak to me a little bit about some of the content. And
Oh, well, I mean, the big thing we noticed going through is, I mean, writing about games has changed a lot in the last 15 years. Uh, Steve and I both noticed Death and Taxes write-up is a little insensitive when it comes to mental health issues, and I mean, we kept most of that as is, but at the same time, it felt appropriate to take a second and call it out. Like, we don't write about like people with mental health issues as if they were a inherent danger to society anymore.
yeah.
But and that's changed a lot in terms of, I feel like, most minority representation in gaming, because 15 years ago it wasn't just white guys in the industry, but it was certainly a much higher percentage compared to other groups, and sometimes it was trying to do their best, and sometimes it was just doing, what they'd learned from TV or books or movies or whatever pop culture they were trying to reflect in their work.
Right. Steve, did you want to add to that? I didn't want to.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's a lot of it is just an increased level of awareness across the board in the past decade and a half in terms of our subject matter. A lot of the older writing, especially in games, that we deal with is not. It has a tendency to be kind of stereotypical. As far as that goes, there's a lot of leaning on the sort of stereotypes,
tropes of the day,
and the tropes of the genre, as far as that goes. And we've learned better as far as a lot of that goes.
And I like to think there's a lot more opportunity for actual different minorities to get more involved in the industry, and through writing, through editing, through sensitivity reading, and hopefully educate us so that we don't make as many mistakes. But, I mean, in terms of education, I feel like, or in terms of developing our skills as game developers and game writers, I've also noticed a big shift in the tone of game manuals in the last 15 years. Because in 80s, the 90s, into the early aughts, game writing tended to be very, very personal, kind of jokey, kind of antagonistic, assuming you, the GM, would want to get one over on your players or outsmart them or keep them in line. And I feel like the community at large has grown a lot beyond that tendency over the last decade and a half.
I think that some of that, it was suggested too, that some of that is really just the hobby kind of growing up with its sort of second generation. I mean, I was basically in that generation that, when they were writing game books in the 80s, I was a teenager. And they were basically aiming, a lot of game books seemed like they were written for or aimed at teenage guys to one degree or another. And then sort of college age guys. And as they've sort of progressed, I noticed that the more modern game books are aimed, at the very least, at adult readers, I would say, with a certain sense of maturity. And there's a little less of, hey, we assume that you're all teenagers with no social skills, as far as that goes. But I have definitely read game material where I'm like, wow, this reads like you're aiming this at somebody who, has never actually had a social relationship with a real human being.
Yeah. I've gone back and tried to read some of the game books I loved back in high school and college, and it's a big shift of what they assume regarding other people, and just the kind of language used. It's very much written at almost like a 10th grade reading level, where you just, keep your words small unless you're using them in a very fanciful, descriptive way, and you're very direct and informal. And
right.
I mean, I came of age. I cut my teeth in that particular era of gaming too, so I am just as guilty. I remember specific sins I have committed.
We've all been there. And it's funny too because the sort of Gygaxian purple prose of a lot of fantasy gaming was what really built my vocabulary when I was a young gamer. I learned all kinds of stuff from reading gaming and fantasy books, as far as that went, and looked up a lot of history and context for a lot of those things.
One of the things I'm consistently, I'll say, proud of and diligent about is sort of our. I'm talking about our culture that we built here in this little moment of time, and that is evaluating where you're coming from and not just be sort of this reactionary person working from a very narrow sort of take on the world. And sometimes I think that, it speaks to an overall sort of social evolution when we are not leaning into only our so that's ever happened to me. So that clearly isn't normal, and that's a thing that people do. And I know that there are very, very fine people who get stuck in that. I have myself been stuck in a very narrow sort of deal. And I appreciate us interrogating that. One thing I want to mention, I want to thank, you folks are chatty as chatty can be, and I love it. I absolutely love it. There have been, let's see, our friend Scott says, as a person with mental health issues, thank you for taking that stand and not using people like me as a villain or a plot point. I really appreciate it. And yeah, I think too that we're able to speak a little more freely than we were in the past. And rather than sort of brush, sort of mental illness and those sorts of things into the category of horror film, Night at the Asylum and, that kind of thing. It's a nuanced, challenging deal. And I too am somebody who has faced, mental and emotional health issues. And I think these kinds of conversations make it easier.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it too.
I think it helps to know you're not alone. It really helped me to learn that some of my heroes in the industry had PTSD or depression or issues like that.
Yeah. And then also to have a little more agency and to say, we don't have to adhere to a trope of, how we're presented to the world. We can be an active part of making that a better thing to talk about and a better place to sort of to come from. So I think that's great.
Yeah. I mean, well, when you work within a particular genre, you especially one that has a long history to it, you have to reassess a lot of things from time to time and say, well, how do we carry forward the sort of the essence of this genre, whether it's superheroes or it's magical fantasy or whatever sort of genre of storytelling you're looking at. How do we tell these kinds of stories but do it in a modern and more nuanced way that carries forward its essence but doesn't necessarily feel slavishly devoted to doing it the way it was done 50 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I think every genre really struggles with how do I translate this thing I love to be approachable to modern audiences without destroying the things I love in it.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think too, interrogating the where it came from, what the information that you're sharing and sort of the origins of things. Once you know that stuff, it's hard to ignore it, and then makes it easier just to understand why some people will feel the way that they feel about a particular issue. So I love that. I love it. I will get Death and Taxes up here in just a moment. PDFs and OBS are not the best of friends, but I'm seeing some people here who are talking, like Bob Petit, talking about rewriting aspects of culture and things that we may borrow in like D&D settings and those sorts of things. That's great.
Yeah, I mean, for a while in D&D, you just either assumed it was exactly like the medieval Europe you knew it was, or you made up something completely fantastical, and then it kind of became in vogue to make your fantasy world like real world history with just like the names filed off. And we're increasingly understanding that, when we do that for cultures that aren't our own, and kind of scrub off all of the nuance and context from them, that might also be a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, especially when you get that, weird sort of grab bag of, I'm just going to borrow a couple of interesting bits from this thing. Like, I think Shaolin monks would be great.
Oh, right.
You
Good.
know,
Yeah.
Why they're here, we don't know, but they're cool.
There's a great podcast called Asians Represent that is a couple of people of Asian descent, like all over the continent, commenting on different gaming products that have come out in the past. And like everything from Arabian Nights to Legend of the Five Rings to Cyberpunk, and talking about like, well, this is clearly not written by anybody who, anybody of Asian descent, or you can tell they talked to somebody or hired somebody who knew what they were doing here.
Yeah. And especially when you get like multiple generations away from that, you take the like martial arts craze in pop culture in the 80s and early 90s.
The one that was already kind of stripped of all of its cultural context.
Right. And then you like have generations of that in pop culture and games and comics and video games and the like. And oftentimes you have these tropes that have just been around for so long, it isn't even clear where they came from.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's in every pop culture genre. I mean, the reason cartoon characters tend to wear big white gloves with lines on the back is because that was the style in minstrel shows back in the turn of the century. And
I had no idea, but you are absolutely
most people don't. It's something I know about as a little bit of historical factoid because I study animation. And it's just something that first generation of cartoonists imported into their style because that's what funny characters performing on stage wore.
Looked like. Yeah.
And that's just kind of survived since then. And now that's just what cartoon characters wear. And I am not qualified to say if that's racist or not, but it's got a certain history to it that,
sure.
It helps to be aware of, and it helps to understand why some people might be upset by it.
It illustrates. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I was going to say it's the same way that a lot of the early superhero costumes are, basically the sort of thing that circus performers wore, because you would see in, like the circus strongman or aerialists or acrobats or the like. That's what a lot of the inspiration for, a lot of the outfits that, characters like Superman wore, was because he was supposed to look like a circus strongman.
That is very fascinating. I'm having those moments that I have on Mutants Masterminds Monday where I'm just like, rapid fire, but I was also going to say too that if anybody wants to interrogate the notion of sort of any sort of systemic situational kind of bias, there you go. Like, look at some of that stuff and where it comes from. I mean,
we could do a whole show on the Hayes Act and queer coding villains.
We sure could.
Which is why all gay people now identify with the villains in Disney movies.
Right.
You say that. I own so many villain t-shirts that I...
Yeah, there's a reason my wife and I own every piece of Maleficent collectible you can find.
Right? Exactly. That's something. I'm going to take that back to my therapist. But Sean says it's hard to thread the needle, Sean, speaking specifically about kind of borrowing from the past to create some, adventures and storytelling now, and says it's hard to thread the needle for my pulp Golden Age campaign. I want to represent the period correctly, but I don't want to keep the number of the nasty aspects. Keeping the Nazi punching is that it's the whole point, kind of keep them around to do the Nazi punching. But
and it's important to keep a couple of things in mind with something like a historical setting. And chief among them is there's no one right way to do anything. It's just a constant process of understanding your audience, understanding your source material, understanding the wider context in the world, and just trying to do your best.
That's
Yeah.
right. And be ready when you get when someone shares with you a discomfort of some kind or a concern. Listen,
And
just listen. Yeah,
Mhm.
be there.
and
Yep.
I mean, a chunk of it is also you're writing a game.
Mm-hmm.
So the goal is to tell stories and have fun. So if you can do that without necessarily going into parts that'll make your players uncomfortable, then feel free to lean into that. It's not going
Mhm.
to destroy history because you leave out the anti-black racism that was all over America in the 1930s.
Yeah.
But if that's, a storyline that you or your players want to look at and feel comfortable with or want to be challenged by, then it's also okay to look at that.
Mm-hmm. And by the same token, it's recognizing that history, and we talk about this a lot, that history is far weirder than anyone gives it credit for being. And that, for example, the Second World War was a hugely freeing experience culturally for a lot of people who were enlisted in the military, just because it was for many of them, their first time away from their home culture, from the life that they knew. It was a huge opportunity to meet a diverse range of people. And so, while certainly there were people who held on to their petty prejudices, it was also hugely broadening for a lot of people. And, a lot of people found friendships and relationships and connection that they would have never experienced otherwise.
Interesting. That reminds me that as a culture, we are, especially our exceptional American culture, where we weren't necessarily going into other countries in sort of a position of sort of overlord and helper and white knight of the globe. It doesn't necessarily set you up well for the conflict when that cultural norms don't map. That is an interesting bit of business. And again, something that I will spend some time thinking about that. Okay, so so we've got a lot of people, talking about the kind of the origins of just comic book mythos and all of that stuff, and definitely a problematic. There were people who are definitely unhappy about the subculture of it all and sort of the subversive nature of some of this stuff. But boy, it sure helped me get through middle school and earlier. But let's see. Eldritch asks, war is socially enlightenment. No, that's not what we're saying at all.
No.
We're saying that,
we're saying that history is complicated and weird, and things come out of more than one thing comes out of any one event.
Absolutely. And to acknowledge that there were people, or that when people travel or engage in this sort of stuff, and it's the first time they're seeing the world, that there are, there's a lot going on there, a lot of emotions. And one big bad thing about war is, war sucks, and we're definitely not pro-war. But there are other emotions that occur at the same time, and we can acknowledge that. Let's see. Wow, we're having some heavy duty conversation. But what can you expect when we're talking death and taxes? And speaking of,
This had just started out as a pun.
I know, right? Exactly. But leave it to us to make it something more.
I'm still very much in favor of weird villains in colorful costumes who have obsessions with, let's say, baking pies in a sinister fashion.
Sure. Unpacking a person's personal relationship with baked goods, I think, something bad could have happened there. Something that Boy, I will tell you, there are a couple things cooking here. Matthew Tyler has locked on to a particular question, and if I don't reset the little
Just
switch here,
encouraging him, Troy.
I know. I mean, honestly, 3 years later, he's still sort of, locked on. His programming will not allow him to move forward if we don't address it. He says, how about releasing a 20th anniversary edition of the Deluxe Heroes Handbook? What's interesting? It kind of leads me to a Ronin Roundtable that was published of late. It's even today, like this morning, right? So, Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about that space?
Sure.
Yeah.
So as Troy mentioned, I did a column on the Green Ronin website that dropped this morning that I called Living in Development Time, Dev Time. And to cite the specific example, if we had wanted to release a 20th anniversary edition of the Heroes Handbook, the time for us to have started working on it would have been about a year ago.
Right.
I
don't mean to laugh, everyone.
The only thing we wanted to do was slap a new cover on it that said, 20th anniversary edition.
Even working at Paizo, like a big name company that's got ostensibly has its stuff together. A hardback book is a year-long process.
It is.
Easily.
Yeah.
I mean, those kinds of things take a lot of runway to get airborne.
Mm-hmm.
Is it difficult for the both of you too, just as people who love the genre and love the work and probably get a little too much of the opportunity to do the work? How do you reconcile the fact that like you want to do the thing too?
Oh, we really want to do the thing all the time.
Sure.
I mean, but part of it is just after your first product or two, you develop a very painful understanding of how much work goes into any product, not just your work even, but editors are involved, illustrators are involved, graphic designers are involved, printers are involved, shipping people are involved, stores are involved, players are involved because they want to know what's coming out.
Right.
Yep.
So it's not just your time. It's not that Steve and I can't just sit down and work extra hard for the next month and have a brand new hardback book ready for everyone on whatever topic everyone's interested in. I mean, most Mutants and Masterminds books start out as a pitch 2 to 3 years before they hit the shelves.
Right.
Yep. Generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, Vigilante's Handbook was on track for, about a year and a half release before
Sure.
the apocalypse happened.
Right.
I mean, and even, starting back with that point in the process, if we were talking in a pitch meeting, the very next question would be, well, what does a 20th anniversary book look like? What does that even mean? Are we talking about a book that has added content of some kind? Are we talking about a book that is going to compete in terms of shelf space with our existing core book? Are we replacing the book with a new edition of that book?
Oh, yeah.
If so, when we say the words new edition, all of a sudden, well, are we talking about a new edition? And how serious of an edition is this?
You can see all of that going on right now with Fantasy Age, where we're not really releasing a new edition. We're releasing a revised and expanded core book, and people are still worried that it's a new edition and replacing all of their existing books. And
yes, right. Yeah, and that's important, and Sean Vieira says even just a reprint, but
reprint. Oh, that's the thing. Reprints can take a couple of months. Just not even entering any errata. Just getting a reprint of a book involves getting a new quote from the printer because since the last time you did this, you've got a change in the price of ink, a change in the price of paper, a change in the price of labor, a change in the price of shipping. So that all has to be estimated again, and then you have to decide as a company, do we want 2,000 copies? Do we want 5,000 copies? Do we want 10,000 copies? So it takes sometimes a week, sometimes
Right.
as much as a month to get the data together over like how well is this selling,
Are
how
we going
much
to
demand.
are we going to print domestically? Are we going to print, in
Mhm.
a foreign country?
Right.
Yeah,
Or,
because if we need this right now, we have to print domestically, but that costs more. Are we going to print it overseas, which costs less, but then we have to ship it, buy it, or via a large boat over the Pacific Ocean, or God help us through the Suez Canal?
That
Is
is,
that too soon?
yeah.
So
Are they
yeah,
still corked over there? Is
no,
the canal still clogged?
no, unclogged at the moment, as far as I understand it.
but
Nice.
yeah, so it can take 2 or 3 months to get a book reprinted. If you don't
Hmm.
know that you're about to run out of a book that everybody needs,
Yeah,
you can be without it for two
it's
or
a
three. Yeah.
yeah, it's a very careful game deciding when you're going to reprint a book, or even if you're going to reprint a book,
Yeah. And
for that
you,
matter.
I mean, one of the worst possible things you can do is get too many reprints of a book. So if we sold out of the Time Traveler's Codex and we're like, well, that was pretty popular. We sold through our first 10,000 print run of it. Let's get another 10,000 books. But we only ever sell 2,000 of those, then
That's problematic. That's a lot of
Yeah.
inventory
yeah.
and all that. Well, so here's the deal. I know that everybody's like, I cannot believe that they're going through the publishing, but here's the deal. We want you all
Sorry.
to know this stuff, but let's get to the stuff we love.
I have no guile.
Right. That's the problem, right? I mean, we're just like, yeah, well, let us tell you all about it. And everyone's like,
None at all.
please.
Yeah, let's get into the minutia of page count. It's got to be a multiple of 16. Ask
You're
me
right.
why.
The chemical makeup
Right.
of ink. Yeah.
Let's talk about signatures.
So here's the deal. And listen, Sean Duggan and Sean Vieira, how very dare you? Combine your powers. I see what's happening. I see it happening before my eyes. I've seen it before. But let's do this. I want to, as a group, one of the things we love more than dealing with this stuff, kind of talking about the nerdy bits of really anything, honestly, is
Mhm.
our the crunchy stuff, like talking about gameplay and talking about all the things that sort of make Mutants and Masterminds great. And I'm going to, what I'm going to do? I'm going to purposefully, I'm not out of spite, because Sean's, I love you, and I do take a little bit of pride in knowing that we have created sort of this mythology around you, and now people are engaging as well.
Done.
They know the power of the Seans. But I want to. On our Patreon, we ask for give us some of your questions. Talk, give us some stuff, and the questions are amazing. And we'll get back to the only reason we're going to move in a different direction, Sean's, is because your questions are so amazing. We could be here. We could just do like the Mutants and Masterminds. Sean's have a question. 3 hour
Let's
stream.
talk about the printing industry. That's what
Right.
people are really
That's
here
what
for.
people really want to know.
Exactly. So one of my favorite folks, Squire Cortez, said, in one of your streams you mentioned an immunity to cod. Is that a 1-point immunity? And if so, would that be to all fish, or 5 to 10 point immunity?
At one point, that's immunity to environmental cod. So you'd be immune to cod who are just in the area, but you wouldn't necessarily be immune to any cod-based powers.
I see.
Now, for 5 ranks, you get immunity to cod damage.
Right.
You're immune to being damaged by cod. You're immune to being shot with a cod projectile.
Right. Slapped with a cod.
Slapped with a cod. Yeah, that's a good one. Stabbed with a cod.
Mhm.
I love it. I love it.
Deadly
and then
if frozen.
At 10 ranks, you are immune to all cod-based effects.
I
So
see.
if somebody has a cod-based affliction, like a cod stench or a slippery cod trip attack,
What about a cod
you
piece?
would also not be affected by that.
If you were wearing a
Yes.
cod piece as a villain, would you be protected against such a sight?
Only if the cod piece were an integral part of the power's function. So
Indeed.
if the cod piece were a weapon, then let us pray that it is not.
It is not. But
Or if there was some kind of dazzle power based on the cod piece.
Yes, I love it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that would explain at times. If you see our the stars of our program with a sort of resting, perplexed face, it's because somebody has used their COD power, their codpiece power of Dazzle. This is, and also that was the lead-in. Squire says that. Now my serious question: a player wants. Hopefully, I didn't read this already. Oh, maybe I did. If I did, I apologize. We talk about the rainbow power effects. Manipulation array wants to be able to do rainbow colored effects and single color effects. None of the colors would
asked us about this in private chat a while ago, but I don't think we answered it on the.
Good.
Okay.
All right. Well, so here's what Squire says: a player wants a light manipulation array. They want to be able to do rainbow colored effects and single color effects. None of the colors would affect what the created constructs or blasts, i.e., they'd all be light and heat. So I don't really think it needs to cost a PowerPoint for a feature, but I'm on the fence. Any thoughts? And his costume would change color to match.
I mean, I'm on the fence. As a GM, that's very easily something you could handle as a description.
Yeah.
Basically, if they want to pay the 1 point for the feature, then make it a feature that comes up once in a while in game.
Right.
But if not, don't make it in, don't make villains that are just vulnerable to the color yellow, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's largely just a descriptor that sounds interesting, but cute special effects usually don't cost anything unless they have some kind of practical use.
Yeah, the whole reason feature costs a PowerPoint is because it's assumed there's some minor cool effect you can get from it, like impressing crowds or having things on hand that you wouldn't normally, or yeah,
it has to be useful for something.
Love it. That is great. So there you go, Squire. Do let us know if that excites your questions gland, which we all know smells a lot like cod. Gross.
Worse, Troy.
You're grossing myself out. Jeez, I need help. This is okay, interesting. So there are a lot of questions that don't necessarily deal with the crunchiness of things, but I'll tell you, we are really kind of exploring all the various options for merch. The Patreon folks are going to get merch for sure. That's happening.
Anybody else get whiplash?
Yeah, and we're going to do that for sure. But there's just, with as much wonderful art and all the artists that have contributed over the course of our 2 decades of doing a thing. There's a lot to sift through, and for folks who are not necessarily part of the Patreon, why not? And also, maybe share some thoughts. I'm not sure how you'll do it because we listen to the Patreon every day. We're talking over there, but maybe you can smoke signals, or I don't know, send a raven our way. And
if only there was some sort of email address people could contact.
Oh yeah, you can send a note to letsplay@greenronin.com, and we will hopefully get to it soon. Or you can join the Patreon, and we'll answer you day and date, which is amazing. So let's see. I'm looking at a question here. I'm having my timelines in my own. Did we talk about Lady Diamond and nihilism?
I don't think so.
Yeah, you're like, I have no idea.
Right,
are you remembering that?
We did.
Yeah, yeah. Well, if we did it on another stream, we'll of course contradict ourselves in this one, and the latest one is canon. So that's the update for you. So in the Super Team Handbook, the character of Lady Diamond, a member of the Outliers, has a motivation that is described as nihilism. Is it the world sucks and there's nothing anyone can do about it kind of nihilism, or is it more of an I've been a warrior as long as I care to remember, what else can I be type of nihilism?
So she's our Amethyst of Gemworld analog, except burned out and on basically the Doom Patrol. I think her nihilism is more of a I did my best and everything went horrible. Why should I try harder?
Certain sort of world-weary nihilism.
World-weary, that's a good way of putting it. She's more likely to just go with the flow than, be insistent or stubborn about
Mhm.
things on her own.
Right.
But she's definitely the first one to be like, well, why don't we just give up?
Right. Why bother? It's not going
Why
to matter
bother?
anyway.
Yeah. But she'll go along with things because the rest of the team is, because,
Mhm.
again, what else is she going to do?
Right.
I love it. Nihilism as a motivation, says Nicholas. Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Wow, there's a lot of, there are a lot of questions around sort of, or requests around like lists of immunities and their costs.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Huh. I mean,
Interesting.
I mean, a lot of the math on sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, and the problem with it is that a lot of those things are very situational.
Mhm.
There's a reason why immunities are pegged to things that are common and rare and very rare, because it depends a lot on the nature of the game you're running as to whether or not things like freeze rays come up a lot or not.
So if you're like immune to mutant powers, well, that doesn't come up very often if you're playing the Avengers, but it comes up all the time if you're playing
Like
X-Men.
the X-Men, exactly.
Gotcha.
So a lot of immunities have to be pegged to the kind of game you've got. Even things like immunity to bullets, varies tremendously whether you're playing in a modern game or a game that is, even pre-gunpowder.
Yeah, or if you're playing in, say, a 4-color game versus a more Iron Age, like everybody's
got a
superpower is
gun.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Alex Thomas sort of touched on that a bit as a friend of the program when we were talking about immunity to COD. Alex Thomas says, I guess it depends on how frequent COD villains appear in your setting, but yeah, it's about context,
does.
right? Yeah,
It does. I mean, from a game design perspective, immunity is literally I don't want to bother with this tax. It's basically, I have set aside this percentage of my points to say this particular challenge, attack, problem is not a problem for my character. And the percentage of that cost depends on how big of a problem you're bypassing in terms of the game. If your character literally wants to be immune to all damage, which is possible, well, you're handing the game master a pretty significant challenge by saying, I want to bypass one of the really big common problems in the game, and my character never has to deal with it. And therefore, you have to come up with other challenges for me.
Yeah, just speaking as a game master one of whose players actually did that, that is a challenge.
It is.
Ooh, what'd you
It
do?
absolutely is.
Is it an ongoing sort of puzzle, or do you find a way to kind of vex them?
Oh, I mean, part of it is just, eventually the villains learn, like, oh, this guy you have to grapple or use an affliction or mind control or
Emotional, yeah.
Sure. So usually in any given encounter, like a villain or two just can't do anything to him. But mastermind villains or villains he's faced before are aware of his powers and know that like trying to hit him, trying to blast him has no effect.
It's pointless. Yeah.
I love it when we are having these conversations and we're addressing some of the questions that people ask because they're truly trying to wrap their mind around how these tools could work and the things that that would make their sessions rewarding. And I really love it when you see that kind of light bulb go off and Nicholas Morrow says, ooh, I get the immunity situation now. Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome.
Great.
Alex Thomas again says, or if you're playing Star Wars and no one has bullets, that immunity is cheaper than immunity to lasers. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And both Sean and Apuk say the same thing, and we've said it many, many times, and that is, a lot of the things that we're discussing and the way that these things are architected comes from a good, hearty session zero.
Yes.
Yeah. A lot of it. Yeah, a lot of finding out what your players want from your game and what they can expect from your game comes down to, sitting down and telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Talking.
So let's see. Oh, yeah. So Matthew says, speaking of the Iron Age, are there write-ups for the members of the Force Ops in the works?
Not yet.
Not yet, but that could be a possible candidate for a Patreon update.
Sure can. It's about time to vote.
Oh,
right?
that's right. I need to put that list together.
Sure,
Right? We need to
sure.
put together a poll.
Yeah, we'll work on that for sure. And one of the things that's important as we kind of move through this stuff and we're thinking about how to incorporate the mechanics of Mutants and Masterminds and sort of incorporating this discussion, that session 0, and actually even pre-session 0, it's a good time to talk about boundaries and that kind of stuff. And I think when we talk about, Nicholas Morrow brings up a really good point in that, immunity to damage, well, then you kind of have a story about targeting loved ones or degrading sanity, and that's where you got to have the dialogue first before you even jump into the suggestion of it. Have that boundaries discussion.
Yep.
I love it. Yeah.
Then you definitely have to be wary of what the player or GM are willing to bring into the story.
Yeah.
That's very true. And you have to, when you're having those particular discussions too, you also have to, have a certain buy-in from the players about not metagaming that discussion.
Yeah.
If for example, you've decided that it is inappropriate for, villains to horribly torture the hero's loved ones, because that, is just, wrong and, would be really traumatic. That's a perfectly understandable boundary to set for the game. But if a villain then kidnaps one of the hero's loved ones and the player's response is, well, nothing's going to happen. We already decided that, nobody's going to come to any harm. Yeah, but your character doesn't know that. And if you use that knowledge that you as a player have about where the boundaries of the game are, that's cheating.
Yeah.
Well put. Yeah.
Plus, you don't know. Like, they could very comfortably transform them into a mutated, let's go with sea anemone.
Right.
Oh yeah, or a school of cod.
Shove them into another dimension. Or a school of cod.
Yeah.
Or convert them to their worldview. And then all of a sudden your brother is like Captain Danger Jr.
My brother, my enemy.
Right. Alex says you don't have to damage the hero to trap them somewhere forever.
Yeah.
Nope.
That's right. Like this.
Teleport attacks are great for invulnerable heroes.
Oh yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
they are.
You are trapped in an episode of Mutants and Masterminds Monday, and you will stream forever.
The great thing is, when you spend 80 of your character points just being immune to all damage, you don't have a ton of
You're not
points
very good at anything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So you're not going to be flying back very quickly if, a
True.
villain teleports you 16 miles away.
Bob Petit says the enemy and enemy. Sure, I love that.
Enemy and enemy.
So
Right.
Jordan
The
Taylor,
enemies like these.
Jordan Taylor, the source of many good, great, and amazing questions, says this. It was a question that was written in the chat, and it is such a great question that I'm doing this lead in because everyone's chatting so much, and I found it. So Jordan says, how would you suggest using, and this will be our final question because it is already 3. What? But how would you suggest using Mutants and Masterminds for a single player series, which is something I've only just learned that people do? They play by themselves. And the thing is, that's fun. And I just didn't even, what a great way to sort of introduce the content to yourself and just enjoy a choose your own adventure, kind of on steroids. But is that something you two are familiar with as, luminaries in the industry?
I mean,
I've run a few.
Like one-on-one or
Yeah, I mean,
solo?
like Game Master one player type thing rather than solo.
I'm thinking solo, clarify, but we'll say solo and then just you and one person.
I'm familiar with TSR's old Infinite Adventures books where you have like a simplified rule set for Call of Cthulhu or D&D or something like that. And it's basically a choose your own adventure book with dice rolls involved. But I don't have any immediate recommendation for how to do that for M&M. I've never even thought about it. It's always been a group activity for me.
Yeah, same here for the most part.
Well, what's going to happen is this is going to incubate, my friend, Jordan, and we'll come back, and then suddenly it'll be like, I just ran 40,000 single, solo adventures, and they'll have some more to share with you. I would like to see, Limited degree on affliction goes from 3rd degree down to 1st degree up. What, Jordan? I do not know what you're talking about. The question is limited.
Yeah.
Limited degree on affliction goes from 3rd degree down or 1st degree up.
Oh, limited degree means there is part of the 1st, 2nd, 3rd degree tier is missing. So,
Right.
like, you don't have the 3rd tier, or you only have the
At
3rd
the third
tier.
tier, pretty much.
But yeah, in either case, you still have to fail by the same amount to get those effects.
Right.
I love
So,
it.
Yeah, in the case of like 3rd tier only, you still have to fail your save by 3 degrees of
3
failure.
degrees. Yeah. Yep.
Dig it, friends. I hope that answers your question. We will be releasing this week our new statted up character on the Patreon, and it doesn't immediately.
Is that Magnifico the Magician?
That was last week.
No, we did Magnifico last week.
Marionette this week.
Ooh,
Oh,
cool.
Mind controller.
You know what was cool with our friend Magnifico? We also created a very special buy anything, Mutants and Masterminds in the store, and you will get 2 PDFs for free. One second edition talking about sort of magic in the world of M&M, and there's some great content in there, and then an additional PDF that talk about magic and using magic in Mutants and Masterminds.
Because you're talking about the 2nd edition Book of Magic.
That's right.
Which is a really good supplement on like how magic works in Earth Prime, and then the 3rd edition Power Profiles for Magic.
On magic.
That's right, and you get those for free if you buy anything. And guess what? That is
nice.
Now that you've heard the secret, friends, that extends to you as well. So you go and check that out. And with Marionette, what would we do? What would be a thing that what is that?
She's a psychic communist.
Yeah.
So we'd either do Power Profiles Communism or
Right.
Power Profiles Psionics.
Yep.
Or, is it Psionics or
Mental-
Psychic
I think-
Power? Mental Power?
Mental powers, I think.
Guess I could just pull my book off the
Right.
shelf here and
So it's mental powers and seizing the means of production.
yes. The 2nd edition book sees the means of production. Yes, mental
Right.
powers.
There we go.
I love it. Well, we will look for that. It's somewhere in the dusty tome or in the dusty libraries of the Green Ronin Library. Nicholas, you would do this. You would. It is
we're over time.
It's 3:05, and Nicholas has dropped a question, and I just don't know. Can we do it? Can we not? We've got to go. There's so much.
We've got to start being a more mindful of the time.
We
Troy.
really do. We really do, friends. But
Yes.
we will be.
Troy wants to stay with you all forever.
I do. I really do.
does.
And if you could put him up for a few weeks, we'd really appreciate it.
Right.
I'll just take up your couch. I am, actually, I'll just take up like a, you have it like a jar or something. I'm disembodied, just sort of fill that
a
up.
lamp of some kind, maybe.
Yeah, like kind of damp rag or something.
Like a comfortable birdhouse.
Oh yeah, I could do
And then,
that.
with a southern exposure.
With or without
Not an
bird.
atom.
Yes.
Yeah. Friends, thank you again for a wonderful Mutants and Masterminds Monday. The two of you are a true delight, and that you will take time out of your incredibly busy schedule to hang out and mess around with us is a true gift. I want to thank everybody who's been watching and who will be watching later on VOD with our on YouTube. And if you got questions, give us a reply. And also, hey, do me a favor. There are a lot of people whom I love dearly who have been a part of this community for some time who are not subscribed to our YouTube channel. So get over there and subscribe. Give us some likes, and check out our stream this coming Thursday with Thursdage.
Subscribe and hit that notification bell.
Hit that bell, ding dong. I never say that and I forget. And then we got to do the thumbnails too, where we're all looking like something really crazy happened. So prepare that facial expression. But come join us Thursday for Thursdays with Owen Casey Stevens, 2 p.m. Pacific. This is next Thursday. We'll have a friend from Drive Through RPG on, but now we're going to release you to your stuff. And I want to thank everybody for watching. We'll be back next Monday. Crystal, Steve, have a beautiful day and a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll talk soon.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.